Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to go over some more remake news that is unfortunately coming out of Paramount this time around. And that is that Paramount is currently moving forward with developing a remake of the 1980s John Hughes classic, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which originally starred Steve Martin and John Candy. Um, they have also apparently tapped Will Smith and Kevin Hart to star in the films. Now, I would assume that Will Smith would be playing the Steve Martin character and Kevin Hart would be playing the John Candy character, and I'm going to move forward with that assumption because it makes the most sense. If they do happen to change it in the future, that might add an interesting little twist to it, but let's kind of go over this. So the idea of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles originally as a film was the idea that Steve Martin and John Candy are both trying to get home for Thanksgiving so they can see their families. And basically the whole thing is about them just having issues getting back home, which is kind of basically the same plot. It's like the B plot line, the Home Alone, basically, where the mom is trying to get home to help Macaulay Culkin because they realize that they left him in the house by himself after they flew to the West Coast. And John Candy also appears in that film, which again, both of them were done by John Hughes. But Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a funny movie. I wouldn't necessarily call it a cult movie, but I think it's very, very popular. It's not necessarily underground. I think it was a fairly, well done and well received film when it came out. A lot of people really liked it. It was one of the few John Hughes films that was rated R. I don't believe many of them were at the time. A lot of them either got PG ratings, or later on when PG-13 came into play, they got PG-13 ratings. But it's mostly just because of the scene where Steve Martin repeatedly says "fuck" over and over and over again. But here's my problem with this and again, I hate the idea of remakes. I think remaking films is a dumb idea. I think remaking comedies is an even dumber idea for the most part, because the problem is that, and it's the same problem that you have when you do a comedy sequel, is the idea of what are the new jokes? Like, what new jokes can you come up with these characters? Because you can't just rehash the old jokes, because people aren't going to laugh at those the second time around. So people that are familiar with the original Planes, Trains, and Automobiles are not going to laugh at identical jokes that are like, if Will Smith does the scene where he keeps repeatedly saying "fuck," people aren't going to laugh at that as much because they've already laughed at it once with Steve Martin. If they did that scene again, which I don't necessarily know if they would. I don't know if they would go that route where it would be a direct shot-for-shot remake. I doubt Hollywood is that stupid. But in saying that, the point is that now they are changing this into something else. There's also, the writer of it is from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I don't exactly remember the name that was attached, but so you're going to get that kind of comedy in it. Again, I haven't really seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine, so I can't judge that show's comedy accurately when compared to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. But again, I would assume that it would be Will Smith and Kevin Hart. I think they would probably work well together. Seeing as how Kevin Hart has worked with a lot of people, and so has Will Smith, they know how to deal with other people. They have not ever, to my knowledge, worked side by side in a film where they're both the lead. So I don't know how that's going to work, but I could see it being funny. The problem is that I think what would be a much better idea is just give Kevin Hart and Will Smith their own film. Make an original movie instead of a remake. That's the problem with modern Hollywood in a nutshell, is the idea that everything is being remade or redone or rebooted or rehashed, or sequels are being made 20, 30 years later. Just give them a buddy comedy to go into instead of trying to attach a John Hughes name to it. Because again, Disney's trying to do that right now too, because they have plans to remake Home Alone, because they recently got the rights to that when they bought out Fox. So you have more John Hughes properties that are going to be coming to the forefront, and are probably going to fail miserably, by the way. But I don't think you should be making a remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's a relatively, you could have just made a road trip movie. You could have just made a road trip movie with Kevin Hart and Will Smith. You didn't have to slap the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles name on it. You could have done something similar, and maybe people would have some people might have pointed it out. Maybe some people like me would have pointed it out to say, oh, this is basically just Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. But at least you would have at least tacked a different fucking name onto the project, for Christ's sake, instead of just using the same shit. Now, in saying that, they could also change the name of the project before announced, but they're already saying it's a remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, so there's no way of getting out of that comparison now. Now, do I think Will Smith and Kevin Hart can play those type of characters? Yes, because they have played them in the past. I think Will Smith can play that kind of business savvy guy who's very easily upset and stuff like that. He has kind of like a not I don't want to say like a hair temper, but maybe something along the lines of he's kind of very easily frustrated and he's just trying to do something and he gets gradually more pissed as the movie goes on. And I can see Kevin Hart playing that kind of goofy character like a John Candy, where he's just kind of there and he's smiling and he's wisecracking and stuff like that. And again, it's supposed to be the pessimist versus the optimist. That's the idea of the film. It's kind of like the Odd Couple in a way, that kind of a dynamic. So I don't know exactly how that dynamic is going to work out on screen. But the problem is, I think you would do a lot better if you had them both in an original concept as opposed to just remaking this film. Now, it is also to note that Will Smith and Kevin Hart's individual production companies are both involved in co-producing this film, which would, I believe, make them both co-producers in general. So they have a bit more of a stake in this thing than just being actors in it getting paid. They are also producers. So they will have some kind of creative say in the film. So I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I don't think Kevin Hart has had too much experience in terms of a creative aspect, like shaping a story or anything like that. Maybe his own individual characters. Will Smith has obviously had more of it, but at the same time, he's very good at playing certain types of characters and maybe not others. He's very good at playing the tough guy. He's very good at playing the kind of snarky, wisecracking guy, the guy that jokes all the time. He's relatively good at playing, the kind of, you know, uh, semi-serious, like frustrated kind of goofy office guy. Every once in a while, I shouldn't say office guy, but and I shouldn't say goofy, but the kind of character that Steve Martin would play in this type of a film. So I could see it working from that aspect. But right now, we don't have a director. We don't have any additional actors that are in the film. The script, I don't believe, has even been completed. I think they've just literally announced recently that they are moving forward with this. So, it's a mixed bag for me already because you're remaking a film that I don't think needs to be remade. I don't think films that came out in the '80s should be getting remade now. Maybe remake them in about 100 years. Okay, just put a buffer somewhere. Just say, okay, no more remakes until 100 years after the film comes out. Because then because it's just monotony. It's just monotony at this point. I mean, what are they going to drudge up next? They're starting to work their way into '90s franchises now. Look at Bill and Ted, Candyman, which I just had a conversation with Weaponized Nerd Rage about. But that might be a debate film later on, but there's a lot going into this that I don't think Paramount is taking into consideration. I think they're just trying to bank off the name because Disney is doing a Home Alone remake. So they're like, okay, we have our own John Hughes property. Why don't we greenlight this and stick this out there and see if we can make that go? Because I would assume that this is going to go into production along a similar timeline to the Home Alone film. So they're probably going to try and time it so it comes out relatively soon afterwards, maybe at most, maybe the following year, so that they can bank off of the Disney money that would come in from Home Alone. Again, assuming the Home Alone remake is released in theaters, I think they are actually doing it direct to Disney Plus, if I remember correctly. But this could also be a scenario where Paramount is, again, trying to ape off of that idea if there are other John Hughes remakes in the pipeline right now, which I don't necessarily know if there are. I don't believe there are, again, as far as I know. So I don't think there's a Breakfast Club remake oh god, I just said it. That means they're going to do it. Please don't remake the Breakfast Club. It doesn't work in modern times, please. But, I kind of want to know what you guys think about this. I mean, do you like Will Smith and Kevin Hart as a team? I personally do. I personally think that's actually kind of a good combination to be in a movie. And I'd like to see maybe them be in their own original movie. But, would you like to see that? Do you think they'd be good replacements for Steve Martin and John Candy in this type of a film where, they have to kind of go back and forth with each other? Do you like the idea of any John Hughes movies getting the remake treatment? That includes Home Alone, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and any of his other films that either have been remade or are currently on the slate to be remade. As usual, put your thoughts in the comments below. I like to read them. I like to know what you're thinking. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?